Hey, guy.
Oh,
I wasn't
nice.
sure what
And I'm going to leave it too. Hey, guys. I'm here to Weeb Podcast. Welcome to episode 4. We're going to be talking about Akira, the movie. Just a quick, we don't normally do this. You didn't hear the intro music clearly, but quick disclaimer. This is a long one, as you may have already seen. Hopefully you've seen the movie. If you didn't, I think we walked through it pretty darn thoroughly. So you will at least get painted the picture of what this movie's about. We do highly recommend watching it, as you'll hear multiple times throughout. It's a beautiful movie. Highly recommend it. But yeah, with that, we'll let you get into it.
Welcome, everyone. Episode 4 of I Married a Weeb podcast. And today we're doing our first Watch With Us Wednesday of Akira.
And I am here. I am here.
Oh.
Took it all out of me to not be loud for 5 seconds. But yeah, decided to watch the famous movie Akira, as it should be famous. We'll get all into that and all that good stuff. But just a quick rundown of what's going to go on today is me and Danielle are just going to give a little bit of info about the movie, just a couple tidbits, a little knowledge, and then kind of go just walk through the movie, kind of like a book club, but with this movie.
Yeah. So do you want me to start with the notes, or do you have some, I know you probably picked up on different things, and I probably have different notes on the movie, or... You know what? I'll start.
Go for it. I haven't said anything. Go ahead.
So the movie came out in 1988 in Japan, but it was limited released in America December 25th, 1989, which, I thought about it doing research before watching it, after watching it, and during watching it, and the movies that were coming out in the late 80s, from Disney or things like that were Little Mermaid, like cute family wholesome shows, and then you have Akira coming and just knocking on the door and saying, "I'm here for you adult people."
Nope, doesn't even say anything. Sucker Punches it says I live here now.
Yeah, and
it's a movie that would have totally been shocking. We weren't alive yet, but would have been absolutely shocking from everything that was known from animation. As she was saying, Little Mermaid, oh, so cute. This, from moment one, it's violence, it's more adult themed, it's crazy.
yeah, and you're really seeing, throughout the whole movie, the underbelly of this post-apocalyptic Neo-Tokyo from, the devastation that's happened and just the lives that these young kids live, which they never really tell you how old they are, but high school or younger, something like that, and just the devastation of society. There's a shot in the movie, they didn't really touch on it, they only give you piecemeal in the movie, but it's a bird's eye view top down, and the top of the cities, like the rooftops, are these really luxurious, fancy, you can see that they're really nice. And then you go to ground level, and it's just garbage in the street, graffiti. You don't want to be there. It's really seedy. And I kind of wondered watching the movie yesterday if something they didn't talk about is, do the higher-ups or the more wealthy people, do they live and work and not even go ground level? We see a couple scenes where there's some nice cars in the streets, but you don't really see normal, everyday people walking around. And it's just...
Well, honestly, it's from cover to cover, though. There's no time. Like, this movie, purely based on, then of course you've got, so little tidbit about this is it's based on a 6-volume epic manga, which actually started before this, hence why then it got picked up and put into a movie, continued being made while production of the movie was going on, and then finished afterwards. So he actually kind of concluded the movie and then almost reverse engineered for the manga to kind of, go back to, okay, how do we get all of these little nooks and crannies and all these different little stories to end up in that one point as the movie did.
Yeah.
Because the director, Katsuhiro Otomo, was also the creator of the manga, and he's just known as being this workhorse. He's just nonstop The manga itself is over 2,000 pages, and the artwork is so finely detailed. It's so just kind of beautiful that even the manga is like a super popular. There's nothing about Akira that isn't like influential.
Yeah. And I know leading up to this podcast, I discussed, buying. I've wanted to for a while buying it. I mean, even the non color, I mean, you can't buy it in color. You have to go on eBay and you're going to spend an exuberant amount. But um, the basic set, minimum, $150, $200, because I was going to buy it for us for Christmas. And, I didn't know if that was an investment we wanted to have. But I think watching this movie and from what I've read from people who have read the manga is, the movie really only is half of the first book, half, like the ending, half of the last, the sixth, and it kind of weaves in details of what's kind of happening in the middle. And as someone who, if you watched it for the first time and you're listening, thanks so much and good job on you, because
Yeah, thanks for actually watching that movie.
Rewatching it for the third time, I looked over at Tom and I was like, I still really don't know what I watched. Like, I've seen this 3 times and there's just so many details that you really aren't let in on why they're doing the experiments. Where did these kids and people come from?
There's a distinct point in the movie. Like, you are on board, you understand everything, and then suddenly, like, this one scene happens and you're like, where am I? But that's in due time. We'll get into the actual movie later. But, Otomo, he, as a director, was, and the creator of this whole universe, was very into it. What's even more impressive is this is just a claim, I guess. Did a little bit of research. Yeah, I learned and did a little bit of research. It was said that he filled about 2,000 pages of notebooks with various ideas, character designs, and all of that for the film. And then by the time that the final storyboard happened for it, it was trimmed down to 700 pages, but attention to detail, and you see it in the movie. There's so much stuff going on in a frame. Even if it's just a group of kids walking, you see that, it's not like Disney. Main character's talking, then you got Fido back there. The dog is staring into a different universe for that whole minute, and you're like, nothing's going on in the background. This group of guys is walking forward. Every one of them is talking and doing something, and it seems like you can legitimately just see the passion behind the animators. And it was this beautiful wave of where anime was a little bit old enough to where kids could have grown up watching some of the classics, and now their passion was totally invested in anime. They got their final, they get their dream job, and then boom, they put it into a project like Akira. And that's why the 80s was so huge, is because you actually have people who are so passionate getting into it, and it's incredible.
Yeah, not only that, but in the 80s, Japan finally had an economy where people could spend money to consume manga and anime and things like that. And also the economy was booming where, people could invest and have jobs in this. And anime and animations in Japan had, only been around for 20 or so years. And what's great about that and the other movies that we'll probably do watchables on is, we didn't have they didn't have a set theme type, nothing was predisposed. People actually had original ideas. So
it wasn't Marvel. No offense to Marvel fans, but I can't even watch those anymore. Same thing over and over.
Yeah.
Granted, anime might be that. Sure, there's a lot of tropes that happen, but Marvel, it's just the same movie to me. Whereas this, nothing held them back. This dystopian future had not been done before. And then you've got things like My Neighbor Totoro. Almost seems like a fever dream when you compare it to any of the cartoons now. Well, cartoons are kind of getting crazy. Adventure Time's kind of wild.
Yeah.
I haven't watched too much of that, but yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. And interesting enough, this film in Japan, when it was initially released, it didn't even recoup its initial its budget. it wasn't until it kind of sprouted out, went into VHS, had some international releases that it became this kind of cult classic, and then started booming and just kind of, yeah, took off after that. And then that allowed, as we said in a previous episode, this was kind of that gateway. It showed the West, whoa, these, like, this is an art form coming over from Japan. This is actually pretty dope, and I like it. So, you know, you're sitting there watching Dragon Ball Z and all that stuff. Well, this was kind of the first step, like that plunge in, and it's kind of cool that it's at least still watchable. This movie could be awful. It could just be that one thing that, like, oh yeah, it's such an influential thing, but then you go back and watch it and it's like, okay, I don't really like it. Like the original Tron. Huge, like, big fan of what it did for VFX, what you know, it did for the movie industry in general. But man, I can't go back and watch the original Tron. Whereas this movie, good night. I can watch this over and over.
Well, and I even read in an article, people didn't even know back in the day that Speed Racer was actually Japanese. I
Yeah.
mean, people really didn't know where these pulls and influences came from. And actually, to see Akira for all of the gore and the brutality that's in the movie, that people still clung on to it from what they were used to, because I'm sure it would have been a big shock for a lot of people to watch. Because a lot of animations, like there was a Studio Ghibli movie, people would cut out scenes in these animations because I'm sure American studios didn't think that, they were maybe appropriate or would have been well received from audiences. But from what I've read, Akira wasn't, and I mean, it wasn't turned down. People wanted it, and it obviously was very successful here.
It's just because it hit that niche. Like, live action, you got Bond, and wow, look at that cool action. Like, this was a cartoon that finally was, I'm sorry, an anime. That, yeah, it wasn't just for, oh, take my kids to it, as I've said before, but like, it is an action movie. It's got all these elements that are just more mature, more fleshed out, and it functions in a whole different plane as other ones. Um, and there was technological advances with this one too. I touched on that before, but of course for this episode I'll touch on it again. But like Disney back in the day, they're drawing 12 pictures per second, which is still, I mean, that's still a good amount of pictures per second. And then they're running it at 24 for the movie. But the thing is you lose a little bit of fluidity to that motion of your animated characters. And with this, at points, there were still points where it was doing 12 frames per second. I mean, you can't expect a 2 hour long animated feature, which I feel like growing up, every movie was like an hour and a half tops. And to think of, like, this is in the 80s, a 2 hour epic
Mm-hmm.
movie comes out. And there were segments of it that were literally 24 drawings per second. So you get this insane, like when they're on the bikes, the
Oh.
flowing of their hair, the flowing of their jacket.
Well, I was going to say, I made a note to talk about it, but, talking about those high frame rates, my favorite aesthetic that they did was the light trails from their bike taillights and, going through the streets. That, I think, is just one of the coolest things that I was able to watch, among everything else. I mean, everything in the movie is beautiful, but even the way that blood drips off of people, guts off of ceilings. I mean, everything just has that realistic.
It's crazy. It almost looks rotoscoped. But it's not, just very talented people. And yeah, it's something that, even if the story, as I said, it can get a little wonky in some parts from the movie, but that, I mean, if that's the one thing that's gone wrong with it, that's fine, because if you just watch it for the ride, kind of like you do with Shia LaBeouf in Transformers, they're not great movies. They're a fun ride, though. I mean, even if you're not into the story, just sitting there and watching it is it's a treat, an absolute treat.
Yeah. And the amount of influence it has given to not only anime and other animated movies, but movies in general. I mean, Kanye West's Stronger music video. Watch it, people, after you've watched the movie. it is 100% ripoff of Akira. I've never watched it before, but I saw someone mention that his music video was about it. And yeah, a lot of the sequence is him laying, on the scanning table, just like Tetsuo is when he's first, captured by this government facility. And, he has bikes in his music video, and they have the trailing,
Yep.
lights, and you have the, Japanese streets, things like that. I mean, oh, and even he's laying in a hospital bed, convulsing like Tetsuo was, and someone's walking down that green hallway that is so iconic to that scene. And it's just Kanye West, who is an anime fan, he has admitted
Listen,
before.
Ye, I think he's even credited. Ye knows what he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The song hits, still hits. But yeah, no, it influenced a bunch of, it's an animated feature and it was a manga, as you guys have now heard already, but like, those two things were changed, like those two mediums. Music, like, even the soundtrack in this movie is incredible. It's still pretty darn unique. Like, when you hear a song from this movie, you're like, yeah, that's Akira, for sure.
Yeah, I made note of, in every kind of climactic scene, you have those. It might not be it, but what I would imagine are like drumsticks tapping on the rim of something,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have that synthetic in the background, and it's whenever that happens, like I kind of get the chills just because you never really have heard that type of pairing before, and the score of this movie just fits so well with the overall theme.
It's refreshing for our Western ears. There's no doubt about that. And then last thing, and then we should just, we'll get into it and then kind of go through the movie. And again, hopefully you guys watched it. If you didn't, I hope this is at least influenced. You can find it now. Like, it's definitely a big enough movie. You can find it somewhere. But, and it's been since 2002. And of course, there's always word on the street. Warner Brothers has the rights to Akira for a live action movie. It would be an unbelievable undertaking because of how near and dear this movie is to people and all this other stuff. And it's gone through so many different directors at this point. I think it's, let's see here, 5 different directors and 10 different writers have been attached to this. But then they, for some reason or another, end up halting it. And at this current moment, because this movie was scheduled to release May 21st of next year, which is 2021. And it was going to be starting filming July of 2019, but I believe it was like just before film. Everyone's stoked on it. They're like, oh my gosh, because you hear the rumblings on the internet. You're like, no way, it's finally happening. No, this is like, well, I can't say, I was going to say this is like hearing about a Final Fantasy VII remake, but here I am. We actually have that now. It just took 20. took a very long time. But not 20 years, right?
What? Final Fantasy?
The original Final Fantasy
I didn't
to
play
this
it,
new
so.
one. I don't know. I'm not going to put any actual number to it because then I can be criticized. So I'm just going to leave it open and just be naive. But unfortunately, Warner Brothers put an indefinite hold on it for now. So here we are back in limbo. Do I hope it eventually happens? Sure. Do I need it to happen? No, because I just have the original movie. And Danielle said we've been thinking about it. I'm going to start purchasing each volume, and I want to go through it just because
I want to know the whole story.
I want to know the whole story for sure, and to flesh out all these different characters because you're greeted with so many cool little. The movie does well. You do definitely get a distinct personality from a lot of different people. But with that said, let's try and go through the movie. It's dense, and I have this cat scratch here of which should hopefully guide us. I wasn't even looking at the book because I love the art is so good, people. I'm writing these notes and it doesn't even look like English. But I think this will work. I think this will work. But yeah, did you have notes on kind of?
Yeah, so the opening title, it shows that it's July 6, 1988, and you just see this huge explosion on the screen, and then it sequences to, I think, 31 years later, and it's 2019.
Yeah.
And which is crazy because it's 2020 now.
Yeah.
And
Well, and to sidebar off of that, when she's saying an explosion, it's so crazy. You just see, oh, nice. This, and again, putting myself back in the day, if I go to the movies, I'm like, oh, it's a cartoon. Go to the movies. The opening scene, it's so jarring because it's just like, oh, there's Tokyo, and this explosion happens. You're like, what on earth? And then boom, you just thrust it in. It doesn't wait around. So we go
Yeah.
from this bombing, and then we are greeted with the new Tokyo.
yeah, and right after watching that jarring scene of this, obviously bustling town being annihilated, um, which, as we harken back in the 80s, in the late 80s, Japan was bustling, and then to be decimated again, and then 31 years later, you're seeing all of, it's still in disarray from this explosion, and you see Kaneda and his biker gang chasing these bikers down these streets, brutally killing people.
Yeah, so let's actually do this in like order though.
Oh, I am.
So, well, first they're at this bar. So we get these kind of
literally going.
not like crazy through, but you got to set the scene a little bit,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I mean, you're greeted with then the new Tokyo, which has been rebuilt up again over the 30 years, and there is this distinct, as Danielle mentioned before, there's this huge split in wealth. You've got this very wealthy parts of town, and then you've got these very, very dingy ones, and where our two main characters, Tetsuo and Kaneda, are, it's a very dingy area. But basically, you see this iconic red jacket with the pill on it, and that's our boy Kaneda. And one of his gang comes up and is like, "Hey, the clown, just typical gang stuff. The clowns are over here, which is another biker gang. Let's go handle it." And then you get this sequence of them riding through town, and it shows this. It establishes what's going on. Like, violence is an everyday thing. Chaos. The town's not normal. Like, this future isn't happy-go-lucky. It's a pretty brutal future.
Yeah.
So, as we're cutting through these beautiful scenes, as Danielle said, with the light trails behind these bikes, just even watch Google or YouTube, Akira intro bike chase or something like that, and just take a look at even that if you didn't see the movie. Interspersed with that is now we have this guy and this what seems to be a child walking around.
An old man looking child.
Yes.
So this man's pulling and, shepherding this kid through the town, and they're being chased. You don't really know why, but, he ends up getting gunned down. The kid tries and does escape the situation. The man who was leading him unfortunately dies and gets gunned down by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And, the kid stumbles far enough into the path of Tetsuo, who, has gone further.
I know, but like, okay.
What?
So just to even paint some scenes, like even that scene right there of when he's gunned down, this is another one that it's, you gotta say something about this scene. He is brutally gunned down. Like, this is, I would have never pictured or see, like, this animation is crazy. It's not what you'd expect. I mean, nowadays it's a little bit, it's still gory by even today's standards, I'd say. But he's gunned down and he tells this little child to get going. And as this is all happening, we're still getting that, bike scene chase.
Yeah, and a lot of the movie, which I made note of later, rewatching it for the third time, now in the mindset of taking notes to do this podcast, I realized slightly how frustrating it is that they're splicing it up into these, I'm going to time it just for the sake of giving it a name, but like, let's say 2-minute segments.
Mm-hmm.
You're with these people, and then you're back with these people, and then you're back with... It's a lot of jumping back and forth, where to a point I kind of felt frustrated, like I wished it was a little bit longer in between. I felt like it was a little jumpy.
I know, but we're talking an animation and a motorcycle chase scene at the quality they were doing it. Absolutely not. That's where I'd agree with you. I think to show that both things are happening, and then when they eventually meet, totally, I think it syncs up for me. But no, I mean that's a good thing to be aware of. Some people might get frustrated by it. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. If they didn't jump around, I think they could have meshed
tell
some
that to
things together.
Tarantino.
Oh,
Okay.
does he do 2-minute sequences at a time?
Hey, you never know.
He does
He did a whole
sequences,
movie
but
of people talking in a cabin. He can do whatever the heck he wants, that guy.
oh, jeez, that
Oh,
movie.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so the biking scene and the quote unquote little boy, which you'll understand that in a moment, um, end up meeting on this road as Tetsuo is kind of not fully paying attention. I think he may have just hit someone over the head with a pipe, as you do in these biker gangs. And before he knows it, he actually is about to collide with this kid. But as the lights of this bike are illuminating him, that ain't no little boy. That's a wrinkly, it's a blue, wrinkly little, what we now know is an Esper. And so the bike collides with this kid. And you're like, okay, well, that boy did. But no, it's, you realize, okay, he kind of shielded himself somehow at this point in the movie. We're still kind of a little confused with that, whatever. But, did I say Canada?
No, you
Did I
said
say Tetsuo?
Mhm.
Okay, good. So
For
Tetsuo is
sure.
now on the ground. The boy's still trying to move. The boys swing up and meet back with him. But what happens, Danielle?
In comes big old Big Brother.
Yeah, the
And
government.
because they're obviously trying to find their ward, this Esper, which we learn is each one of them has a number. This one is number 26,
Mm-hmm.
which, holy heck, 26. I can't imagine 25 and below. Like, they don't even hint on that. It's just 26. And yeah, they're coming to, obviously take number 26 back into custody. And, they see the other boys there. They take them into custody. And they see Tetsuo on the ground and don't really know anything about him. But they take him.
Along with the whole gang, because anyone even near this kid is now a liability.
Yeah.
Which, picking up this new kid, there was also another guy in a floaty chair, and that's when you think, wait a minute, these little kid body people have something going on. Because, yeah, he's floating in this chair like Xavier on crack, and just kind of comes over, and he even, like, you can tell there's even a difference between all these espers as he looks to this one that was trying to escape and says, there is no escape. Like, you're coming back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they grab the whole crew, and then they end up questioning them, which is actually a pretty nice, lighthearted point in the movie.
Oh, in the police.
The police station.
The makeshift police station, which looked like it was in like a, they say later in the movie that the Olympics were going to be held there the next year, which would have been 2020. And when they do a pan up, it looks like an auditorium, like at the complete end of the scene. So they just have these makeshift areas because at the same time of, the underlying theme of this movie is there's this coup d'etat group that is trying to get and undermine this government because they don't really know what they're doing, but they have hunches and they're trying to figure it out. And which is why they have these huge facilities, questioning these people because they were found so close to this Esper.
Yes. And then a quick thing is, yes, if it wasn't for this dang pandemic, this movie would have called it all the way back in 88 that the 2020 Olympics were going to be in Japan. So close. I think this is a nice little insight into Tom and Danielle. We were actually in Japan last year. It already seems so long. We were supposed to be there
Again.
last week, but that didn't happen. So instead, we're sitting in our closet. But it was so cool seeing they were building stuff for the Olympics, and on little areas of certain towns, we saw they branded it with Akira. It was so freaking cool. We may have to put that up on Instagram or something. Yeah. But yeah, so the kids are interrogated from Kanada's little gang, and it's pretty lighthearted scene at that point. But what ends up happening is they kind of get discharged. They're like, all right, these kids are boneheads. They have nothing to do with anything that's going on behind the scenes here. But he does manage to see this girl that he now, like, Kaneda is like, that girl looks cute over there. Oh, she's my friend. So he gets her out of that little pinch.
Mm-hmm. Which Kay, we find out, is her name. And we see her in snippets. I'm pretty sure we see her briefly before this.
Yes, in a little snippet while that guy's getting gunned down in the street. So you know she's somewhat related to what's going on.
Yeah.
But we just don't know yet.
Exactly. And, so Kaneda gets her to be released with them. He obviously has the hots for her. Yes. She wants nothing to do with him.
The guy's spitting game, though, I'll tell you. You want some confidence? Be like Kaneda. He is. He just kind of...
I don't know. As a girl, I thought he was too much of a bonehead.
Well, yeah, but I'm just a boy. I don't know anything about what girls like, okay?
I mean, his outfits were definitely fire, but I don't know if his lady ways were.
That jacket, I'm telling you. I wish real-life clothing could look like anime clothing, and no offense to any cosplayers, it just never hits the same.
That and the hair. Very hard to translate that. But
then, yeah, so we go to a scene that's kind of our first dabble into, like, the government's at play here. You get the colonel is talking to... Is it a doctor? It was something. You just get this conversation going, and the only reason I remember this scene so distinctly, 100%, is because there was a sick bonsai tree on the shelf in that scene.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I've got to talk about that because your boy Tom here is a bonsai kind of guy.
Yeah, so from what it seems is that I'm assuming it's just, I don't know if it's Japan or just Tokyo, but there's an executive council that the colonel is on that, will play a picture down the road. But you can tell that the colonel is starting to be in some hot water for this testing and things he's going to be doing. And people not happy with probably how he's spending his funds on trying to figure out what the heck's going on with these espers.
I have it written later. I don't want to go flipping through the pages like a crazy guy because I know you've probably already heard 1 or 2 page flips. But then we cut to Tetsuo. He's in this government building and some tests begin. He's on this table going crazy. If you have seen, as Danielle said, Kanye West's Stronger, you'll see kind of a little, kind of how that went. But, they're just starting to, and they look at his pattern, which is kind of this reading of his psychic ability, which will come into play later of like, this doctor is always like, oh, look, what's his pattern looking like? What's his blah, blah, blah. So they're monitoring him, and there's definitely something going on behind the scenes. But what we do find out as they're having the conversation about that is, they want to use his abilities as a key to understanding what Akira or Akira, like just trying to get more information on this Akira and what could have caused certain things to happen, which we'll find out more of that is.
Yeah. Right after that brief spell that we see with Tetsuo, it goes back to the gang. When they're released with the police says, your school has been informed, you see your principal tomorrow, and, we see this, we have a VO of the principal or whatever. It looked like a kind of a PE teacher telling them how much of a, derelict group they are. And
That's
you
right.
see, the outside of the school, there's a statue. It's got a bra on its head and just graffiti all over it. And then kids are in these desks not paying attention, and they're getting sucker punched in the face.
No, it was an open slap.
It was an open hand?
I think.
Oh, I thought it was
my mind probably filled that in. I didn't want to see an open fist on these poor children.
Because they just get one hit to each of the domes. And why I think it was a closed fist was because when they're leaving, the one friend, I can't remember his name, but you see him kind of like off on the side because you kind of see Kaneda obviously is in the front, and then Tetsuo's, or he's not there actually, but all the other people, and this one kid's just got blood.
Oh yeah, he
looks like he's barfing.
Which, as he's punching him, every single punch was met with the word discipline.
Discipline.
So,
Discipline.
it's such a funny little thing. And one quick thing, we go, like, that's going to be the problem is pacing between both of us, but, like, when the scientist is talking, that's when we get our first kind of, like, use of this word, but they hint at, when they're talking about Akira, they say the power of a god, which that'll be touched on later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the boys, they're leaving after getting walloped. School clearly sucks. Am I right, fellow teenagers? I'm not teen, I'm old. Sorry about that. So they get out of there, and, like, that's pretty much it. And then we kind of cut back to Tetsuo,
Mm-hmm.
and not really liking where he's at. So
Yeah, and well, the nurse comes to give him his meds, which
Mhm.
play a big part later on, and he is not there. And then you see him, or more so, you see Kaoru, which is Tetsuo's girlfriend.
Mhm.
She's doing her laundry in one would assume like a ladies' dorm. None of
Mhm.
these kids appear to have families, which they touch on later, that Kaneda and Tetsuo were abandoned by their families, and they grew up as orphans together, which is I'm sad to see how their relationship ended, but why these kids are so messed up, and
Mhm.
why the school is taking into their discipline, because they have no parental figures really,
Yep.
guiding them and giving them any discipline. But Kaoru finds Tetsuo, and they're hanging out, and they're just reminiscing on, what kind of better life could they have if they just run away.
Yeah.
And
So they're just like, we got to get out of here. And there's this kind of, like, interesting dynamic of Tetsuo and Kaneda. What we should say here is Kaneda is this leader figure. And Tetsuo, even in that bike thing earlier, and maybe we'll see it one or two more times. Oh, we will here, actually, is Tetsuo is always the one who needs help.
mm-hmm.
And that kind of is eating away at his character throughout this movie. And Kaneda is always that dude of, I got you. So Tetsuo decides Kaneda's bike, that's our escape. Like, we need to get that bike, which is sick.
Well, and it does make sense why he would need Kaneda's bike, because as we saw when he hit number 26, his bike exploded, so he has no wheels.
Yeah,
and Kaneda's bike is, from what we can all tell, it's souped up, and it's going to get him far away, him and Kaoru, of where they need to go.
And he was way, way ahead of his time with just putting random brands all over this bike. Kaneda's bike is legit one of, like, I think one of sci-fi's most popular vehicles.
Mm.
It's so freaking cool. I believe it was in Ready Player One as well.
Yes, it was one of which, yeah, I had seen. That was a hard, not to sidetrack, but Ready Player One, really good book. Unfortunately, I'm not as cultured in a lot of the call-outs that they have in it, but that was one that, I was really able to pick up on it. Yeah, very cool.
Seeing it in the movie. That movie was just, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. But yeah, so they take the bike. Very short-lived. Because the gang that they were going against, the clowns,
yeah,
they're back.
Yep, and they see, they don't really see who's on the bike. They just obviously know, because Kaneda's bike is so iconic, that they just see, oh, this is our rival gang. So they ended up jumping Tetsuo, which the reason why he gets jumped is because he can't, the RPMs, you have to be in a certain RPM for the bike to even work, and Tetsuo doesn't even know how to work this powerhouse
even
of
though
a bike.
It's souped up, this bike is definitely Kaneda's baby, and only he knows how to
Yeah.
to get this thing moving. But yeah, so the bike slowly starts breaking down and rolls to a stop, and then that's when the clowns are like, yo.
And that's when they roll up, and we just see, as a woman, just probably one of the most terrifying things that, could happen to a woman. Tetsuo's on the ground, he's being held down, and she gets, Kaoru gets pinned up on a wall, and her shirt is slashed. We see a little exposure, and
she's punched straight in the face. It's a very uncomfortable scene.
Yeah.
But it's doing its job. I mean, like, this is that world. It's crazy. So, unfortunately, too late. Then Kaneda and the boys show up because Kanata gets word that his bike's been stolen. Of course, it's by his knucklehead friend. He's got bandages around his head for some reason.
Yeah.
So gets there and saves Tetsuo yet again. And then you get this anger from Tetsuo because he's like, dude, I'm fine, whatever. And even his girlfriend, who just got slugged, is like, Tetsuo, are you okay? And he isn't having any of it, and he just kind of wants to get away. He's very, very emotional when it comes to being helped.
Yeah, and you can see that the emotions that have been building up are starting to spill over because we eventually see him starting to lose control. I mean, even harkening back to when we first see him on the bike before he hits number 26, he blatantly disregards Kaneda's call out to wait for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then this happens. So, even from the beginning of when we see Tetsuo, he's already starting to rebel, and now we see the ramifications of him not reeling in those emotions and
paying the price.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly. And then in, usual fashion, he starts walking away, and cue Tetsuo's luck. The government is right around the corner. They have like these gauges that can read psychic ability, and they see that something, his pattern changes, and then they can specifically see, and they think they say like, oh, there's blue over there, so they know like that's where Tetsuo is. So come around the corner, grab him again, gotcha.
Yeah.
Not effective at running, this guy, but well, not yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those scenes where he's taken away, and then the little crew here, the dingy bikey crew, are all hanging out up on the rooftop. So I think they go up there and dabble in a little bit of nightlife. To which the girls aren't having it. They're like, these boys are dumb.
They're
Let's get
dumb
out of
without
here.
their bikes.
And then you're like, oh, okay, we're kind of. Yeah, is that exactly what they
Yeah,
say?
she
They're dumb
said
without their bikes.
Yeah, she said something like they're useless without their bikes, and it's like, oh, so you guys are only in it for one thing. You girls are mean.
It's Kaneda's bike. It's a sick whip, but
yeah.
it honestly, oh gosh, someone created like a real life one. It doesn't look nearly as cool, clearly, as I just dissed on cosplay earlier. Cosplay's cool. Not saying it's not, but just as they're leaving, the boys are chilling. Boom, explosion. It's another terrorist attack. And who is running from explosion?
Kay,
which is the girl from earlier that Kaneda had rescued from the possible jail time.
Yeah. And because I don't know how she would have weaseled out of that one, but
no, I have
yeah,
no idea.
Kaneda sees her. He catches a glimpse of her as she's leaving this area. I don't know how the heck he sees her because he's up, on that like bridgy rooftop area, and she's coming out from something what seems like underground. Or
He eats a lot of
like
carrots.
That. And
Is that what parents say? Eat
your
carrots for your eyesight.
Yeah.
I didn't eat any carrots.
But yeah. So Kaneda, starts chasing after her. Kay gets she gets lost or separated from one of her team members, gets in a tight spot, and Kaneda comes in to save her, and she doesn't really seem very thankful when, she almost got gunned down, basically.
Yes, and, because this is when they're in that little ravine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're running down into this kind of like little ravine, some stanky water down there. You can tell it's dirty. And these two cops go, hey, you. And then she pulls a gun on them and just starts shooting. And you're like, whoa, this girl's used to getting into some trouble. Now, Kaneda jumps down, kicks one of them, all this stuff. Well, one of the cops puts their gun towards, I think it was Kaneda. And she's like, yo, she yells, and then she shoots this dude straight in the face. And it's drawn crazy. Like, you see his face move. It's
peels back.
It's wild. These animators,
yeah.
top notch, clearly. But, and it's one of those things you're like, oh, okay, it's just part of what she does. She's in this, clearly this quote unquote, no, it's a terrorist group.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But she is just dead set staring. So I took that as that was her first kill. I think it's all starting to become really real to her that, yo, this isn't a game. You're not just in some group that's doing a little thing and explosions or whatever. But Kaneda grabs her, and then they start running, and then end up
at her designated meetup
spot.
Mm-hmm. With her team.
Which, I don't know if it goes right to that scene, but I do know do they then say, who's this guy? Is that the next scene?
Um, oh no. So after that, we jump to Tetsuo, and it's a whole sequence while he's being tested.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, so we leave once again, Kaneda and Kei go back to Tetsuo and see what the heck he's been up to.
Yeah. But Tetsuo, this little nightmare sequence, or like the testing that she's talking about, you get this kind of dreamlike flashback into his childhood, but then it's interspersed with this like crumbling, like his shadow starts crumbling and then he begins to crumble. So again, like this character is not doing so hot. Like they've thrown all the symbolism. They are punching you in the face with symbolism. So this is like, up until this point, you should still be able to like handle what this movie's,
Mm-hmm.
putting down. Um, I think then after that.
And then we get a glimpse into the third Esper we haven't seen yet, number 25's dream.
Yes, well, it was part of Tetsuo's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't
Um,
know because she has some kind of psychic ability, so I don't know if she's controlling him at some point. I mean, we
well,
see
she takes
her.
control of someone later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have written here actually, and then the line goes with, but she is like in this crumbling dream with Tetsuo. Good catch. Good on you.
Mm.
That's why I married you. Um, where she is too with this crumbling, and then you hear her voice say, "The city will crumble, and many will die."
So many people will die.
And so many people
I
die.
did it word for word. I
I
put
did
quotes
too,
around
but
it.
remember, I didn't write in. I don't know. I didn't know I knew Japanese as well because I can't read this. Um, so they then also saying that we can't let this boy go.
Yeah.
So now you see this dynamic of that's clearly referencing Tetsuo, um, which then we'll get back to a scene when we kind of
Mm-hmm.
go more into that. So
And then we jump again. We're not back to Canada yet.
no, now we're the colonel and the doctor, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So go ahead with that.
So we get a little glimpse on what the colonel's been up to, and the doctor, and it's a weird sequence. We see one sequence, he's going to this area, they're talking about all these controls, whatever they're going to be looking at, making sure the room is secure, and then going back to this elevator sequence where, I I I didn't want to transcribe this whole movie verbatim
Well, of
because
course,
I
yeah.
mean it's so hard. You want to make sure you're paying attention, but they're in this elevator. The colonel and the doctor are talking about, you know, the doctor's like, I thought you hated this city, but now you're trying to save it. So starting to see multiple sides
Yeah.
of what the colonel's intentions are, and then we're back to present time when the colonel is going to check on the state of, and I put in my notes because I wasn't sure if they were going to do it or not yet.
Yeah.
Where they house, and then it's Akira.
It is the boy, Akira. And yeah, you see as this progression, they're going. It's hidden somewhere because they are traveling. They're going down these huge elevators, and you can totally tell Evangelion totally has like a lot of their elevators and these weird things referencing back to this movie. Probably doesn't. I don't know. That's what I think though. So they're going through there, and you kind of get this hint that Akira is known by the government, was hidden and covered up. Like that initial explosion, which at this point in the movie, I believe we know was a psychic explosion. Sorry, this is now new information to you guys. That psychic explosion at the beginning of the movie was actually caused by Akira. He had this lapse in power. It overtook him and just, boom, decimated the city. So it wasn't a nuke. It wasn't that. So the government has covered that up. The government also has, you'll see a lot of sketchy stuff going on, and some of that has leaked out, and there are people on the street who are like these weird followers of Akira, and they want the second coming, and that, this city is not how it should be. And it's very political driven society, and there's just so many different levels to that.
And we do see while the colonel is, in this housing unit for Akira, that there is the number 28. So now you're putting it together that, okay, number 25, 26, and 27, they came before, so they must have known who this is. So these aren't people who these aren't espers who came after, they were all at the same time.
Exactly. So then this is the scene I was thinking about earlier. And yes, now we cut back to Kaneda, his girl. Well, not his girl. He sure thinks it. She is.
He has a cute line like, not to say that you're my girlfriend or something, but you could be. I don't know. He does like something really cute, and it's.
That's what I'm saying. He's pretty smooth. The guy's all right. And that's where, you know, dork all my life, if you guys can believe it. Didn't get smooth till I met Danielle here in art school, which we'll touch on that later. We got a romance episode at some point, and then you guys already. No, we'll end up telling the tale. Anyways, the resistance members meet up with her. Very questionable about, whoa, who's this guy? She ends up explaining, yo, listen, she wants to go. You want this Tetsuo kid out? Because they've switched their, mission to now getting Tetsuo out because they see he's going to be more important than one of these little old people.
Mm-hmm.
She says, that's his friend. He's valuable. He can calm him down. Bring him with. So now we start this kind of mission impossible. We're going into this building.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big building. Holy mother
Oh, we're going to skip to that already?
No, I'm just saying that is a big building. Which, guys, please. I know we're explaining the movie. Please watch it. You got it.
It's going to do it so much better justice.
All we're doing on this podcast is begging. Just please. But Danielle, let's keep it ripping.
So, yeah, just have that brief scene with Kei trying to get Kaneda into their plan to break into the facility. Then we go into how I mentioned before, the colonel is part of this executive council.
Parliament.
Oh.
I wrote it down. So that was the Parliament Council is what that group is.
Okay. And there's another man at the table who I put in my notes, the man I will call Wormtail, because
he does look like Wormtail, this guy.
Yes. Because I don't know if they might have mentioned the name later, but he's just sitting back.
He looks like a rat.
Yeah. Not like dresses up, but his face and his hair, he's got big buck teeth. You can tell the man's up to no good.
True.
And everyone in the council is ganging up on the colonel because, he wants more spending because obviously now he is Tetsuo. I'm sure he's needing more funding to get more information out of what's happening, to put the links back to Akira.
And taking care of these freaking kids.
Yeah.
All these psychic kids, which Parliament pokes fun at, and they're like, oh, you're kindergarten. So the government's not even taking it serious. Like, guys, you of all people. But then they start talking about how, like he even existed. So it's like some of these people are either so enveloped in this image of he didn't exist, or they're Akira, or like they're just that stupid. Like, welcome to government, but
yeah,
that's a different story.
Yeah, so the colonel basically walks out, and yeah.
Then you end up seeing actually the colonel and talking to the Wormtail, we'll call him, because we didn't catch his name, and you find out.
See, was it though?
It was, yeah.
Because I thought it was part of the resistance.
No, that government person, he was so corrupt. He was the one employing the resistance to get in there.
Oh, so he did both. Okay, I must not have caught it.
Yes.
When they're on that bridge section.
Yeah, it was the bridge section, which beautifully animated, such great parallax and colors.
Them moving and the background moving.
Oh my gosh, guys, please. Welcome back to the Breathy Podcast. But all right, so yeah, I know this has been pretty dense, and we are quite a bit into this podcast, but it all starts getting a little bit more progressively faster and faster. So we'll try and pick it up a bit so you can go about your day. Thanks if you're here. We always say it, but thank you for being here. Danielle, what happened next?
So we go back to Kaneda, and he is with the team, the anarchists, and they're breaking in the facility. And, in the scene that we saw with them before, they have these key cards from people who work there. They get changed every week, so they have a tight span of when they can break into the facility. So you see one of the guys on the team, and I love his line because the security team at this building, they're like, oh, you're not scheduled to be here until next week. And the guy, great improv on this guy covering his bases on the story, oh, the cable came early and might as well be fixed now. I already have my team here and I got vacation time coming next week. And I was like, boy howdy, if a person working there is not going to relate to that, then, I felt like that kind of sealed the deal. Like, it wasn't just, oh, here's my excuse. This part came in early. It's like making it real.
If it wasn't the gratuitous violence, that is the moment that you knew this movie was for adults, because that hits. Everyone's like, yeah, dude, let this guy through. So the resistance team is dressed as maintenance workers. I don't know if you said that specifically, but yes.
No.
And they're making their way in, and so they kind of have a ruse to get in as the cleaning crew or maintenance crew, whatever,
Yeah,
what have
maintenance.
you. Carry a ladder anywhere, you can get anywhere you want. It's been proven on the internet, trust me.
And then, very short scene after that, we go to what I call the trippy Tetsuo dream sequence.
Oh my gosh, beautifully animated. That's all you're gonna get from. I'm like the Steve Irwin.
Well, it's creepily
of
beautifully.
anime. Are you hearing me? It's a beautiful scene. Oh, Steve Irwin.
Yeah. But so my first sentence is, because I'm obviously typing as I'm watching, trippy Tetsuo dream sequence with Tetsuo and the bear, ... bleeding white milk. And then I put, OMG, Tetsuo says it is milk.
Yes, so it's in fact milk. I just wrote, Tetsuo starts, all caps here, tripping. So he starts seeing these little toys walking up. And there was a scene a teeny bit before the resistance gets in that he's sweating his ass off in bed. We've all had that, Tetsuo. Don't even complain. We've sweat. Yeah. All right. But he starts, he sees these bears and these toys moving towards him, and then he kind of moves his hands and grabs them, and then they're gone. Well, cut to now, stuff in the room just starts forming into a gigantic bear, which, as Danielle pointed, is oozing this white milk. Again, the animators, masochists. You can see each individual thing. This wasn't in the day computers take care of it, particle systems. No, hand-drawn. All of this stuff flowing together, beautiful sequence, and they start attacking Tetsuo, and you're like, what is going on here? And then the voice, you end up hearing voices. It's like, those are the kids. What the heck? But Tetsuo, in a freak-out, steps on a glass jar after it breaks and starts bleeding, and then you hear these voices come in. They go, oh my god, ew, blood, or whatever. No, that was like a 2000s kid. They just said it like a normal person. Oh, wow, oh, ew, blood. All right, I can't even do it, but it says something about the blood, and then you realize as these forms of the bear, this car, this other stuff, it starts fading away. It's the kids, so they're messing with Tetsuo. They want to hurt him.
Yeah, which is crazy, because if they already know how volatile he is, why the heck are you exacerbating the issue?
Well, no, they're getting to him quick while he's still on meds.
Oh, you think they were going to try and kill him?
Yes, 100%. They want him dead.
Put your little hands around him.
Spoiler alert, their hands aren't big enough, okay?
Well, there's 3 of them all together.
You know what? Hey, guys, everyone hold hands. We're going to choke Tetsuo. So crazy scene, which I think that one might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie. The music, the aesthetic, it's great.
You know what? Especially the car that shows up from, I can't remember the number, maybe 27. He's the one who's in the hover. When he's animating, with his kinetic ability, the car, telekinetic ability, that's right. The car, I got super PTSD from
the Toaster.
The Brave Little Toaster movie, which is, I loved that movie when I was a kid. Rewatched it as an adult, had the worst anxiety of my life, and
that movie proves drugs are in Hollywood. Have always been in Hollywood. It is built on drugs. But yes, so
jumping back in that same scene, with the fever dream. Not really a fever dream. It was really real, but Tetsuo breaks out of his room.
No, the bear, when it came in, ripped the room open, and you know that.
Okay, true.
So there's a big gaping hole in his room.
And Tetsuo gets out of his room, kills the...
Dude, come on, some pacing for our viewers. Paint the picture, baby. So
he's stumbling.
He stumbles out, he's sweating, and 3 guards approach him in Tetsuo style.
Well,
he can't
one doctor, 2 guards.
3 people. All right, you know what? Check me. This is a game of tennis, and I like it. So these 2 guards and doctor, and you're like, well, textbook Tetsuo, get back in your bed, nerd. No. Kind of cuts to black for a second as you see he's getting quite angry. Tetsuo, that is. Gets a little angry. Cuts to black, and what do we see when it comes back?
Oh, blood and guts. Ceiling, floor, dripping down. They've been annihilated. They've been vaporized.
The only way I can say it is he juiced these boys. They were no more. It's so crazy. So clearly he's now free to move about the country. He's gone. So Tetsuo is able to escape, and clearly his powers are now being used in a malicious way, which is kind of crazy. Oh, we didn't touch on it. Back when he stole the bike, they show up to get Tetsuo after he had seen his girl, and Kaneda comes and goes, dude, what are you doing? He had the bandages around his head. Before the government finds him, he has that weird instance where he's flipping out and getting all these imagery going through his head, like his insides are falling
Spilling
onto
out.
the ground, and then it cuts to what everyone else is seeing, and he's trying to scoop up his insides back into himself. Such a cool sequence again. But sorry, missed that. Yes. Anyways.
So, right after that, we go back to the anarchists, and they're getting deeper and deeper into these sublevels, and are eventually discovered in the sewers, and have this huge shootout with these like ski hovercrafts.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much in detail we really have to go, but they end up getting separated again. Kaneda, you know what? I made note that Kaneda's skill of running at a moving object, jumping on it, and taking over a person, because he did it earlier.
He kicked him right in the face in the biker fight.
Well, yeah, when he came to save Tetsuo, he jumps off the back of the bike, running towards the clown gang member, and just knocks the teeth out of that one guy, and now he's doing it towards a speeding ski hovercraft.
That's right. And this is, you know what, I think we are now at the officially an hour mark. We're going to not spark note it, but we're going to start, I think, ramping up our pacing here. And as the movie does. It is a very dense movie until it hits this section, and then it's just chaos reigns, which is good. But,
yeah.
Well, not that chaos reigns. You get it.
But,
Tetsuo ends up.
Oh, well, Kaneda and Kei get the bike. They keep going on.
Yes, and then Tetsuo ends up in this baby-looking room, which you find out is where the 3 Esper kids are, the psychic kids. And you see they're trying to attack him, and then one of them even says, like, kill him, whatever. You see that the motive is plain. Like, they want to stop him because they don't want another Akira.
Mm-hmm.
In that same breath, I have to say, then the girl Esper also guides Kaneda to actually come meet up, because she's like, well, maybe this guy can get him to chill out because he's getting a little crazy up here.
Well, we find out that she's actually controlling Kei.
Yeah.
So she's...
And that's how they guide. Mm-hmm. Yes, good call. But government shows up. There's just a little bit more pandemonium. A little bit of a psychic battle happens. And then the colonel comes in and he's like, enough. The colonel dominating a room. And he's got that haircut. Classic. He looks like he should be in a fighting game. Good on you, Colonel. He's a good dude, I think.
Yeah. And then, we can jump, because all of the rigmarole,
Well, little things like, it said, the one Esper girl again, 20, what is she?
She's 25, her name is Kyoko.
Kyoko.
We find out
lovely.
her name
Can we have a puppy and name it Kyoko? Oh, bless it. She says, big people like you shouldn't have the power. Which that will go in. There's one section that when we get to it, I'll kind of explain what that means. I mean, it's pretty plain, but we'll talk about it anyways.
Yeah. And then Kaneda and Kei finally make their way into this crazy scene.
Well, quickly, also, Tetsuo is now given a new motive. The kids mention Akira. Or Akira. Yes. Sorry, I can't keep switching up. Let me go Japan mode. Akira. And they say, you're like, not maybe like you're like him, but then he goes, who is that? And then he now has this motivation of, if I find Akira, he might be able to help me kind of control these powers, because they're starting to go a little crazy.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
And Kaneda and Kei finally arrive on the scene, as Tetsuo is just destroying what is room A, where the kids are kept. And, Kaneda and Tetsuo kind of have a little standoff, and Tetsuo finally says, you see, Kaneda, I don't need you to save me anymore. And it's just sad, because now you kind of know that the friendship's
over, and it was not necessarily a good one. Like, you only brief into it, but like, that was the moment, okay, here's Tetsuo's insecurities. He is now, it's mania time. Like, he has this power, and that's just not good.
Mm-hmm.
So he ends up flying. He can now
Yeah.
fly, he finds out, by jumping out of a window, doing his maniacal laughs, and he ends up at that original bar that we saw, to where Tetsuo then goes in there. He's acting like he owns the place, because he kind of does at this point with these powers, and he kills the poor bartender. And then gets these pills, which are these drugs or whatever. He starts taking those. His two old biker friends that you don't really get to see too much of end up coming to the bar, seeing him and going like, what is wrong with you? What's going on? And unfortunately, this is when you know it's off the deep end. Not even friends are safe. Tetsuo ends up killing one of the members, which is just, yeah, I mean, the whole movie's brutal. It's just another brutal part.
I mean, I don't want to do a whole bunch of quotables, but, it was so chilling when they come into the bar, which the friends' names are Kai and Yamagata. They're coming into the bar and see how it's destroyed, see the bartender's dead, and they look up, and there's Tetsuo sitting on top of, at an elevated level, and they're starting to have some banter, and eventually Tetsuo says, "A fish out of water dies, huh?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, there's certain lines in the movie that are so chilling.
Yeah, harsh. So then we cut back to Kaneda and his girl. I keep calling her that. Her name's Kay.
Kay, yes.
Kay are kind of in this like weird cell thing, and she'd bring up, and I'm just going to quickly bring this up. She says just how, Akira is this ultimate energy, right? And that's kind of where the status of him is. And then she mentions the quote, which is pretty cool, not pretty cool, but like it just kind of gets this whole idea across, is an amoeba given the power of a human is kind of like this thing she draws about, like, Tetsuo is now, like, Akira and Tetsuo, when you get a higher power, like they've got these weird psychic things, to humans, they are a god now, because they are possessing this thing. With an amoeba, if you give them the power of a human, but they remain an amoeba, they're just going to continue doing what an amoeba would do. So just eat everything around it, produce, do all that stuff. So what they're basically just drawing the parallel is here is, because Tetsuo, and this goes back to the Esper saying big people like you shouldn't have this power, it's because Tetsuo is already to the age where he's set in his ways. He's an adult. He's seen the worst in the world. He's got, all these problems. And so when he's given this power, it's not like an innocent thing when like these kids had it. The kids in these Espers are still able to be fine because they've grown up with it. It's been honed, and they don't use it for anything that they shouldn't. Whereas Tetsuo is now taking all these personal vendettas. He's just going crazy with it, and it just goes to show too much power. It's not going to be working out. So adults suck, I guess.
And growing up sucks.
Go to the grocery store. You'll see it. You know for a fact that, yes, people suck.
And once again, we see that Kyoko, which is number 25 of the Espers, is once again controlling Kay to try to... She sees the possibility of them helping them three to stop Tetsuo and, in his path of destruction, to be like Akira.
Yeah. From here, and we don't need to go into specifics, it's more of just a visual Mod Podge. You kind of, for a little bit of the movie now, you're following Tetsuo as he's making his way towards Akira, who is under the stadium that is being built for the 2020 Olympics. Again, they predicted it. So cool. So he's on his way there. Bridges are collapsing. This cult is following him. It's pandemonium. Tetsuo is a animal.
Yeah, because finally, Tetsuo is in the street. The government's trying to keep him at bay because they know where he's going to go. And there's people, bystanders, pedestrians in the street. Some of them know or have inklings about Akira and are his quote-unquote followers. And they're seeing, and Tetsuo is unleashing his fury in front of these people. So that's when all of these people start migrating and following him, and a lot of them, or most of them, die because they're just in so close range to his destruction path.
Well, there's quick little, like, signs of emotion. The government goes, all right, take that kid down. That's him. And you got this guy in a tank pointing his tank at this kid, and he goes, shoot at that kid. And they're like, yes, do it. And there's hesitance, but he does it. And there's this awesome scene. This tank shell is coming right at Tetsuo, but he just stops it with his telekinesis. And explodes. It's wild. So we do eventually end up at the stadium.
Yes.
And at this point, there's been a little bit of a fight. And actually, no, we can't say the stadium yet because Kaneda meets up with him before he gets to the stadium. Because actually, he doesn't end up in the stadium. He goes towards that, like, military base thing, right? And then they go, oh my gosh, it's the kid with the cape, and there's a little bit of a fight. And then Kaneda starts fighting with him because he eventually loses his arm.
Well, I think that's above the state. That's like Akira is kept underneath.
No, it's like he's under there, but the entrance for the government, I think, is on the side.
Oh. Okay.
So yeah, there's this big fight, and sorry, we're not to the stadium. I apologize.
I must have. Like,
it's been a ride, and if you're still with us, honestly, thank you. They won't normally be this long, clearly, but I think this has been fun, and we definitely got to dive a little bit deeper into this movie than we thought. Like,
yeah,
we took it at base level multiple times when we watched it, but starts approaching where he can end up going to see Akira. The government's there. They give him a fight, and then Kaneda shows up. You know, you see them fighting, gets a little bit personalized, and then the government calls down this hell beam. Soul from space. It's a big satellite that shoots a beam down because, like, suddenly everything starts going blue. You're like, whatever. And another beautiful animation point. Just watch the movie. These beams come down. It's just annihilating, and it ends up blasting Tetsuo, and his arm comes off. Grotesque, whatever. Then he's like, I don't like that very much, and Psychic jumps up to space. Another awesome sequence as he's up there walking on the thing.
And it's just quiet.
Eerily quiet, yeah.
Because space is quiet.
Can you believe it? So they do that. Then he starts shooting beams down, and luckily, before it's about to hit Kaneda, the satellite ends up hitting the atmosphere, burning up. Save the day. Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thanks, Earth. Earth is a character in this too. Save the day at that point. So now we can then just, quickly jump to Tetsuo is in the stadium. He has pieced his arm back in a sequence that you see all these machine parts rebuild his arm. Another fantastic animation moment. The animators put every piece locking into his arm. It's insane. Just, yeah, highly recommend.
So in my notes, I actually have the Tetsuo opens Akira's container.
Yeah, he ends up going down
and
there.
then Soul happens.
Oh.
So that's why I was saying, what?
Listen, I'm old. Okay, so no.
It doesn't matter. We all know what happens.
What happens.
Then we'll reverse.
So he ends up getting the pieces, and to which the Colonel actually tells him, and it kind of messes him up.
Yeah, because when he's talking to Tetsuo over the microphone and saying, this is the remains of Akira who you
are wanting to see.
Yeah. We took him and have tested on him, and this is all that remains.
Yeah. He's literally like, it's in jars. There is half of his brains in one, his nerves in another. It's crazy. He's just a bunch of jars.
Yeah.
So he was an unfortunate child that, after the big problem he caused, ended up kind of getting dissected. And again, people are awful. That's going to be the basis of a lot of things. But Twitch now, he just ends up in the stadium. He's kind of lost a little bit. And then his girl,
Kaoru,
shows up.
Or Kaori.
Kaori. There we go. Yeah. That's it. Shows up and is like, what's going on with you? And this is where you see he's now a little bit more scared of this power that's going on with him. Because it's starting to get a little too much powerful than this container that is his body. And, he ends up seeing her. He's like, you got to get away from me. So you can tell something's going on.
Mm-hmm. And then the Colonel also arrives kind of at the same time as she does. And he's already seen the mental levels of what Tetsuo's at compared to Akira's levels when he was trying to lose control. So now he understands and is mad at the doctor, I told you if it got to this point, you need to tell me because we need to contain it. And now he knows that they're basically at a point where there's no return.
We're going to get Akira version 2 is essentially what's going on. This power is getting a little too crazy. So the ending sequence and it's
just a big glorified fight sequence.
Crazy. So the weak point of Tetsuo at this point is his broken arm. So the power is now, it finds that spot and it starts leaking out. It's this nasty blob of grossness. And it starts just grabbing people. It grabs the colonel, which it luckily stops, but then it grabs his girlfriend along with Kaneda.
Yeah, because Kaneda eventually showed up as well, kind of right after the colonel. He's got his laser thing. They have a little bout, and now Tetsuo is starting to lose control, and he's starting to turn into the blob.
Yes. So he starts grabbing all these things, and then he ends up saying, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I've grabbed Kaori, and, she's going to die. I'm going to kill her or something.
Yeah.
And he's very scared. It's very sad.
Yeah. I mean, that whole sequence from then on, I mean, you can just hear in the voice of,
good voice acting. And this was English, by the way. We didn't do the Japanese for this thing, but and unfortunately ends up killing her.
Yeah.
Tetsuo, it's just chaos. His body is going crazy. And Kaneda eventually makes his way out. I think he maybe used that laser gun.
He used the laser gun, yeah.
And falls out. And then the Espers show up.
Mm-hmm. Well, they've been doing their magic on the
syncing
jars. Up.
So they're just doing something. You don't really know what they're doing. He starts going full on crazy mode, and then he takes the form of a baby, which is very creepy. But it is this ultimate vulnerability. He is lost. He's alone. It's not that babies are alone, but you know what I mean. Like, but then right at the pivotal moment of when he's like gonna be taking everyone in, the Espers succeed, and Akira shows up, and you're like, what in the world? And now this big, huge dome of energy that Tetsuo is starting to create, Akira's like, I got you, and makes a dome over that dome.
Mm-hmm.
Heard you like domes. So from that, this huge glowing orb starts forming, and it's looking bad. It's looking real bad. And Kaneda is grabbed again and is taken into this white thing. None of the Espers are in there. It's just this big white orb. I think the colonel's been teleported out at this point.
Yeah, the what's her name? Kyoko told him to leave.
Yeah.
So he went,
Yeah, so at that point, the Espers are like, dude, Kaneda didn't do anything in this scenario. We need to go in there. All three of us need to get him out. And then, there's this hesitance. We're not going to be able to, we don't have the power to come back out. And you're like, what is going on here? Well, they end up jumping in, and then we're greeted with these flashbacks, which is really cool because then you get to see a little bit of these kids when they were young and seeing Akira in their little, science experiments, tests and stuff, like kiddie ones, not like the weird in their body or whatever, but like, these little tests, and he was just one of them, and you can tell that, this is...
And all getting their power and cultivating it at the same time, They're all four of them in the room doing their tests. Akira, obviously, they show that he's subpar, or no, that's bad. He's above par.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. And we see a lot of sequences with Tetsuo and Kaneda, which it is confirmed that, yes, Tetsuo and Kaneda were both abandoned by their families.
And you see that in some flashbacks there.
Yeah, and a really heartbreaking image of Tetsuo outside what one would assume is his house door, and it's just stuffed with mail or paper and things like that.
His parents are just gone.
Yeah, and we get a really sweet moment where, Kaneda, obviously we see where he gets it. Tetsuo was being made fun of, and a toy was stolen from him the first day at this.
And at this point, they hadn't talked.
No.
They're not even friends.
And Kaneda just walks up to him and said, here, this
is yours. With a bloody nose, and he's sniffling, goes, this is yours, isn't it? And you can tell that he was in the same scenario, but he's not afraid to get into a fight, gets the toy for his friend, and then that's where they become great friends. And that's where it is. Yeah, it's a little sad that they now aren't anymore. So he ends up teleported out. teleportation. They leveled up at the end, and it was just doable, I guess. But it's like that could have saved a lot of time earlier. But he ends up out of it. This explosion that is taking over, because it's still hurting the city big, and then it implodes, and then it's gone. And as that's happening, as it's starting to implode, and as the white is like taking over, you hear the Esper children going, just saying, I forget the exact lines, but it's something. Got it?
I wrote some little quotes. So someone says, I think it might be Tetsuo, I can't remember, but this is the birth of the universe.
Yes.
And then I think it's Kyoko, she says, but someday we'll have to, which it's kind of out of nowhere when she says this, but she says, but someday we'll have to because it's already begun. Yes. And then you hear Tetsuo again right after that. I am Tetsuo.
Yes, which is like a biblical thing of Tetsuo, Akira, and the three kids have now almost kind of taken this little moment in time and created another universe. So now they are doing their own thing and have left this world. Our main character, Kaneda. Well, in this case, he is the main character of the movie, but I feel like in the manga that might not be the case. But he's safe, and that's it. I mean,
and that's where
it's pretty abrupt. But it's definitely a ride, and I think hopefully our podcast gets it across as. I think it doesn't help that we're sweating in this closet. By the way, we're still in the closet. It is by the end of it was a ride. I think the 2 hours is just long enough. I don't think. Glad it didn't go any longer for the anime, but that is 1988's Akira, and I hope you guys enjoyed this little walkthrough.
And hopefully watched it yourself or are going to watch it from maybe some points you've heard here.
Absolutely. If you've made it here, thank you. And we'll catch you next week with a new episode.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.